Originally, I was born in New York City, and we came down here when I was about 9 or 10 on the Silver Meteor train. My mom and 4 kids. It's kind of exciting. She got a job working cleaning fish and bartended and supported 4 kids. And I went on, joined the military. After I got out of the military, I went to California, I was an airplane mechanic. I worked what the heck is it called? Used aircraft. But before that, I was at McDonnell Douglas. But it was too cold there, and I lasted about 2 weeks and moved to California. And that's at used aircraft I decided to start surfing. The guys all work there surf, so every day after work we go surfing, or early in the morning we go surfing. Back about 62 or 63, I got a little bit tired of California, came back to my roots in Florida, St. Pete, to visit my mom, and decided one day, I had brought an old 9-foot Bing with me from California, and decided to take a paddle, because I checked the tide chart. The tide was going out by St. John's Church over in St. Pete Beach. So I took the outgoing tide and figured with the tide change, I'd paddle back to my mom. So I got out there, and there were waves at Blind Pass. So I surfed them, and there was a little place where all the kids were hanging out after school, and everybody was wondering what the heck was that. They'd never seen surfing before. So that was there was no surf scene here when I showed up in the 62, 63. After the 60s, 62, 63, and everybody wanting surfboards, I thought about starting a shop, but I didn't have the funds. So I went to work for National Aviation, and they told me to cut my hair, don't come back. And I had a few $100s saved, so I didn't cut my hair. I didn't go back, and I wound up at a little strip mall over on Treasure Island here. It was $50 a month. I lived inside my shop at night and take a shower early in the morning with the hose in the backyard, and sort of everybody started coming in and wondering what the heck I was doing there. So I'd always have some red wine and a story, and people would sit around and hang out. And next thing I know, surfing started blossoming. But the problem was the city of Treasure Island didn't like all us. We were new, long-haired people that they didn't understand our lifestyle and stuff. So they asked my landlord to evict me. So the city was kind of happy. I guess they got rid of me. But my mom and a bunch of other people helped me out, and we saved up a bunch of money, and not a bunch, but took a ride down the VW bus with the flowers all over it, and showed up at 9841 Gulf Boulevard. There was a for sale sign. There was a little shack, and Mrs. The lady, what the heck was her name? But I can't remember her name. But she worked out a deal with a low down payment and monthly payments, and here I was, and I called the city to make sure my license was still good, from point A to the new point B, and they didn't know who I was, because, back then they didn't have caller ID, so they asked me, yeah, for sure, your license is definitely good anywhere in the city of Treasure Island. So I come on down here and opened the door up and walked in, and next thing I know, I was a business. Here I am, 1966, and the surf shop is now got roots because I got a mortgage. When we first opened, we didn't know what to carry, or who was, how we'd even get product. I had the few surfboards I brought from California with me, and there was a place called Inex in Daytona Beach that were printing T-shirts. They had the only printer in the state. So if you wanted a T-shirt, you had to go to Inex in Daytona. So we drive over there and show them, they'd make a design up, and we'd get some T-shirts and drive back. And next thing I know, I had T-shirts. But one day, about a month or two after I was open, this guy named Dave Lenhart come walking in. I'll never forget him. He had a white plastic belt on, creased pants, funny shiny shoes, shirt that just didn't match anything else, and walked in and said, I'm the Hang 10 rep. So he's my first salesman. So he walked on in here, and I looked at him. I go, what are you selling? He says, Hang 10. And I'd heard of Hang 10, so I says, okay, we'll carry some, but you can't be representing Hang 10 dressed like that. I said, you need to change yourself to more surf looking. So that was my first salesman, and next thing you know, after that, I think, God, I can't remember what companies came after. Catch It, maybe, and there was a bunch of off-brands back then, and gradually salesmen found their way to 9841 Gulf Boulevard, Treasure Island, Florida. Then we had to figure out where to get our surfboards and other little things that go with surfing, like fins and, all the accessories. So I heard there was a guy named Bill Feinberg that was shaping and making boards over in Melbourne, and it was Oceanside Surfboards. So I drove over to Melbourne, met Bill Feinberg, and we hung out a little bit and talked surfing and surfboards, and I had enough money for 2 boards. So I bought 2 boards from him, threw my VW bus and with the flowers all over it, and headed on back to St. Pete, Treasure Island. And I'd sell the 2 boards the minute I got here. People were waiting for them. So I'd hop in my VW bus and drive back to the other coast again. And I got enough money for 3 boards. And Bill would look at me and goes, "This is going to be a long, tedious adventure for you." I go, "Yeah, but this is how it's got to work." So next thing I know, back, 3 boards are sold within a week. I'm back over again, getting 4 or 5 boards from Bill. And Bill goes, "Do you know anything about checking accounts?" I go, "And what's a checking account?" So he explained to me, what a checking account was. He says, "Instead of bringing cash over, you can start writing checks." I said, "Okay, that sounds good." And he says, "Okay, here's your 5 boards." I paid him with my cash and came back and started the checking account at First Gulf Beach Bank in St. Pete Beach. So I've had a checking account now. So I called Bill up and said, "I need 8 boards," because I sold the 5, whatever I brought back. So he had 8 boards waiting for me. But on the way over there, the VW bus broke down. And it was about $700 to fix it. So by the time I got it fixed over in Tampa, I got to Bill. I says, "I need 3 boards." And he goes, "Well, what about the other 5? I go, "I had to fix my VW bus." He goes, "Oh," I says, "You've been going back and forth in that thing, aren't you? That's kind of hurting it." And I go, "Yep." He says, "I'm going to give you a thing called credit." I go, "What's that?" And he goes, "Well, I'm going to give you boards, you pay me and mail me a check." He says, "You understand all that?" He says, "I guess I'm going to learn, aren't I?" So that's how I got my first credit, was through Bill Feinberg, and he just got inducted to the East Coast Hall of Fame, well deserved. And next thing I know, I'd go over and I'd pick up 10 boards, and I'd only have to make 1 trip a month, and I had credit, and he'd get paid, and everything was good. Some of the first sales reps that came through here back in the 60s was, there was Hanson Surfboards, and they had a rep. His name was Bill, but I can't remember his last name. And he came here with a young girl that was #1, Margot Godfrey, the #1 female surfer girl. And they were promoting Hanson Surfboards and Hanson accessories. So they were my first company that came here with boards from California. So we carried Hanson Surfboards. And Margot and I believe his name was Bill, stayed at my mom's house. So Mom cooked lasagna one day. And I didn't know Margot was a vegetarian, so my mom had to redo dinner. But I remember we all had a nice get-together, and that was my first sales rep in Hanson. And after that, later on, there was, I guess, Tinker from California, Eastern Surfboards, who later became Bruce Springsteen's manager. That's another story, but that was another place we get boards from Challenger Eastern Surfboards. There was other East Coast guys that come over here to help promote their brands. There was Gary Proper, and he carried his own line of boards, so we bought Gary's boards. And Gary spent the night here or something, and Gary went on to be you could crash here at the shop, because I sort of lived in the back. And Gary was the one that got the Teenage Ninja Turtles going. So he made a fortune on that a little later. But he was very artistic. So he sat around here, and, we had a few beers one night and hanging out, and he decided to paint the inside of my shop. And we, figured, well, black lights were kind of neat. So we did black lights, and he did fluorescent paint, and we did the inside of my shop just all psychedelic, and it sort of went with the outside, which was orange and lime green. Some other shop stories along the way with people that came visiting through here. Once we were known that we were a shop and an enemy, people from everywhere were coming. We had Herbie Fletcher came with his son Christian Fletcher. They brought a bunch of boards, and we bought boards from them. There was no waves, so everybody went wakeboarding, and that was kind of fun behind my boat. There was, let's see who else came through here. Corky Carroll came here a few times, and he was kind of fun. And, I could go on and on and on. Some of the interesting parts of starting a surf shop in the Gulf Coast, especially Treasure Island, they didn't look at us like we were regular kids, that we were long-haired people that surfed, rode waves, and sort of had a different lifestyle. So all of a sudden, the city of Treasure Island decided to ban surfing. So you were not allowed to possess a board in the city of Treasure Island and be in the water. You could be in the water, but you couldn't touch the sand. If you touched the sand, it was a $54 fine. They had a special vehicle to put your board in and drive away. So they used to come out with a bullhorn, and they had a rifle, which was kind of fun. I guess that we were real bad kids back then. But they would take their bullhorn, and they'd have their rifle in their hand. You know, and you kind of threatened that they're going to shoot us, but no one ever got shot. But it was sort of intimidating when you're sitting there on the beach, trying to ride a wave. And it was before leashes, so when you lost your board, it was right up on their beach, and they picked it up and put it in their truck, and off they'd go. If you wanted it back, it was $54. Eventually, we figured out a way around that. We'd come over from St. Pete Beach and paddle over to Treasure Island, surf, and then go back to St. Pete Beach, and the cops would just yell at us and everything else. And then St. Pete Beach banned it, so it was like we couldn't go anywhere. Then we'd go up Blind Pass and go to somebody's backyard and come up a ladder or something in the bay side. But we figured out how to keep surfing, but it was a lot of kids were losing their boards and paying that fine. And then eventually we decided to start a little club called the Suncoast Surfing Syndicate. And it was like $3 to join, so we could hire an attorney so that we could get our surfing back again. So we hired an attorney, but his hands were sort of tied. It was kind of hard to get them reverse that. So we got the Surfrider Foundation from California got wind of what was going on. They all came out here. They brought an attorney, set up a meeting, and it was in St. Pete Beach where the meeting was held. I remember it well. And the argument was, there was maybe 800 surfers. I mean, didn't know there was that many kids around here, but standing room only and everybody waiting outside. So I didn't count them, but there was a lot of them. But they fought the Surfrider Foundation, beat them on the grounds that they don't own the beach, the high water mark. We can walk on it. So surfing the ban got reversed, and we got surfing back again, and it was all thanks to the Surfrider Foundation from California. A lot of help came from my mom, which she cleaned fish and bartended, but she still, had a few bucks laying around sometimes. And every time I got in a jam, she would come along and help me out a little bit. In fact, when I bought the shop, she loaned me, I needed $1,200 down payment, so she loaned me part of that to get in here. And then my sister came along and decided to come, my sister Jerry Carl, married to Bill, but she showed up and said she needed a job, so I hired her, which made life easy for me because I wanted to surf, and being a shop owner, you never get to go surfing. Everybody else does, but you don't. So she started watching the shop while I go surfing. The next day I was going to Barbados with friends like Gibby Migliano, or traveling with the Hendricks kids, or just going Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, and Barbados. But it was all because my sister and my mom, whenever I ran out of funds, she was there to help out. My sister Geraldine came on board, I guess, in the late 60s and stayed, she must have been here about 40 years she spent here working. She was a fixture, and people almost knew her more than they knew me because I was the one that was always gone somewhere, not really being here, saying hi all the time. So she was the greeter, and anybody wanted the board, next thing I know, I'd be over here helping out. But I got to surf when I wanted to, and there was Scott Patel and Tommy McDonald, the dude. There was Del Turney, some of the early surfers, and we'd all hop my VW bus and go over to the East Coast while I picked up boards. And we'd surf, for a day or two and then drive on back. And it's sort of on the weekends I'd be gone, and Geraldine goes, I never get any weekends off. I go, well, I'll work next weekend. For interesting stories, there was a time back, I guess the 60s, there's a guy named Dale Chenault, and there was Beach Club Productions, which was Joe Lambusta. And they didn't have any place to sell their concert tickets other than at the venue. So through Johnny Green, they all came out here one day, asked if I'd like to sell concert tickets. I go, sure, what do I have to do? They go, well, we'll bring you tickets, you sell them, you collect the money and give us back the money. I go, sounds all right to me. So next thing I know, it was like Led Zeppelin tickets, Stones tickets, anybody that came to town. A lot of times the musicians would come out here to the beach and do a little hello, and it was kind of fun. I got kind of starstruck there for a while, and that lasted for quite a while until computers. And as soon as they got computers, there was a company called Ticketmaster that took everything over, and they came to me and says, "Okay, you've been a good ticket money collector, but you're going to need a computer." I go, "I don't know anything about computers." And they go, "Well, you have to buy a computer, and we'll set you up." I go, "I'm not buying no computer." So I lost my little connection with tickets for all the concert venues. But, later on, I think that would have been a good idea to buy the computer. But at that time, I just sort of said, nah, I don't need a computer. But today, I guess you do need a computer. Now, when I would go on trips, it was sort of like where do I go? You look in Surfer Magazine, which is no longer around anymore. You go, wow, you see pictures of waves in Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, things like that. So one day I decided to go to the 1968, they had the World Championships in Puerto Rico at Rincon. So Tom McDonald and I hopped in a plane and went over there to go surfing. We rented a little house up on the hill and hung out with Freddie Grosskreutz. He recently just passed, but he was one of the first people I surfed with in Puerto Rico. And the waves were fun. I'd never rode that nice, long wake breaking wave like, double overhead or something. And there was a place at Rincon, there was a place called Domes, and you weren't allowed to surf there because they had a nuclear power plant, but the nuclear power plant didn't work. But, we snuck in under the fence and go down there and surf. And then one day the guard goes, "Excuse me, no, in Spanish, you can't do that." So I hand him $1, and he showed me a better place to go under the fence. So the next thing I know, I had an in with the guard there. I'd give him $1 a week or something like that because we were there a few weeks. So we surfed there, and then we went other breaks. We found a place called, we didn't have a name for it. We didn't know what it was called, but it was a great break. And this older little woman would had a donkey or a mule, and she'd come down to the break every day with candy bars and sodas and water. And her name was Maria. And we'd lay on the beach, and there was no convenience store or anything there. Just Maria with her donkey with a bunch of stuff she was bringing down the beach. So Tommy and I looked at each other and goes, let's go to, when we wake up in the morning, where we're going to go surf? They goes, well, let's go to Maria's. I go, that's a great name for that break. So Tommy and I think we're the ones that name it Maria's. And then another day we went to another beach, and we had there's an old man with a stick walking the beach, and with his dogs. So, he'd always be there walking his dog, on that beach. So the dude, Tommy McDonald, I decided, well, let's name that beach Dogman's. So back in '68, we found 2 new spots that we called Maria's and Dogman's. And to this day, they're still named Maria's and Dogman's. I don't know whether we were the ones that did it, but that's, in generalization, we just sort of named it that because that's where we were. There was a bad time that in 1995, there was a electrician that came by, and he was going to charge like a bunch of money to put up a neon sign. But David Hole came by and said, I can do it. We can do it ourselves. I go, okay. So I told the electrician, I'll save the $50. And so David and I hooked up the neon sign in the front window. A few weeks later, the shop burnt down. It shorted out, and I didn't have any insurance. I'd canceled my insurance so I can go on surf trips. So here I come. I was up in South Seas. I was on a fishing trip with a friend of mine, and I get a call from Lori Foster about 3 in the morning. Your store just burnt down. I go, what? And back then they didn't have phones in the room, so I had to call the hotel, and nobody knew where we were. So Lori called everybody in Boca Grande, everywhere in that area. Finally found me about 3 in the morning, and I got to the phone, and I go, what? So I hopped in my truck and headed here, and sure enough, there was no shop left hardly. It burnt down 1995, right before Memorial Weekend, and I was broke. And then, I'll tell you what, this city and friends, not only the city, but everybody, I'd say within hundreds of miles, vendors, people, everybody came forward and started giving me money. And I started the club again. There was a Suncoast Surfing Syndicate that collected money to help start the first shop. But then we started another club to raise funds to build a new shop. So if you bought a $50 membership, you get a card that says you got 20% off for life. Or if you paid $100, you get a membership for everybody in your family that gets 20% off for life. And people to this day still have the cards. They still come in. They're kids. But it was successful, and an old girlfriend loaned me some money. Gail Gilchrist, she loaned me some money. My mom loaned me a little bit of money, I think $1,200 or something. But we gradually got it put together. And a shop like this would have taken 6 months to build. We finally got our paperwork to build in July, and September 1st we were up and at it. And the biggest drawback was because there was surfboards here. The state and the county were concerned that there was some kind of chemicals from the surfboards in the ground. So all of a sudden, the last minute, they said I had to have a ground, whatever they call it, to check your ground to see whether there's any residue. And I called the state, and they said, yeah, we'll be there in 2 to 3 months. I go, no, I need you now. And I called the county, they said 6 weeks. I go, no, I need you now. So Mr. Straubinger was my contractor, and Von McCarthy was my architect. And Mr. Straubinger, I called him up, told him my dilemma. He goes, you don't have a dilemma no more. I go, what do you mean? He goes, it's your lucky day. I got the state and the county here at one of my properties that I'm building, doing soil samples. They're coming to you right now. So there's a little bit of luck. But we got it built. And September 1st, we were open on Labor Day weekend. Probably what makes me the happiest and most proud is how long the shop has lasted. I've got, I'm the one that's the weak link in this whole business, because if their shop has a $5,000 a day, I'll spend $6,000. I'm the guy that goes on trips, buys cars, boats, and does whatever I want to do, because all of a sudden, since I grew up, I never had money. So now that I got money, I don't know how to budget it, don't know how to save it. There was a few managers over the years that yelled at me, but I'm still the same way. And I think most memorable things would be the people that have supported me all these years and maintain friendships and continue now having kids that have kids that there's 2-3 generations that are coming in here. And I could sell. Yeah, people have offered me some ridiculous amounts of money. Somebody came through here about a year and a half ago and says, I'll give you $2 million for everything. And I go, I said, no. And then I saw them a few months later, and their kids were all mad at them. They took the money and bought an insurance agency. And the kids said, we don't want to help you with the insurance agency. We wanted the surf shop. So I did tell them $3 million, and they didn't up their money. But well, we could count our blessings by being healthy and being alive, because through the years, through so many of young people died early on stupid occasions, and people that have had health problems. But knock on wood, I've managed to be very thankful and blessed that I still have my health. I'm getting ready to go to the Bahamas this summer. I've got a boy that's 17 years old that's special needs, and him and I get to go, fishing together, cast netting together. We went to Cuba recently, Europe, so quite a few countries over there. Just came back from Costa Rica, and I think I'm just very lucky to have the people in my circle in my life. The future Suncoast Surf Shop would be with my son, but he's not really, capable. I mean, he could hang out here, but I don't think he understands, how to do things because of his special needs. I've got Jordy and Mike working for me right now, and Jordy knows surfboards inside and out. He's been doing a good job. He's been with me a few years now. And Mike, he quit a good paying job. He says, I like the freedom that I can come and go. And everybody's sort of happy. Jordy gets to go surfing. Mike gets to come, work when he needs to work, and they're pretty happy where they're at right now. And I have no intention of selling it because I don't know what the city would do without a surf shop. This place is almost, a figure. I don't know what you'd call it. It's been here so long. I wouldn't want to sell it. I think it's going to go on, even in my demise. It'll still continue somehow.